name with no return type, and it is used for instantiating the object. Object को instantiate करने के लिए constructors का use होता है. Okay, so we have also done one program of the constructor. Okay, तो ये वहां तक हमने पढ़ा हुआ था. Okay, so in today's class we are going to talk about one more interesting thing about your Java. Okay, and that is your method overloading. You need to listen and learn this carefully, because you might not have studied this before. Okay, जिसने नहीं पढ़ा है उनके लिए ये सुनना बहुत जरूरी है. We already know what is method. A method is a function, okay, so which has a return type like this: void, integer, character, double, whatever it is returning. Void means it's not returning anything, and then we have the name of the method. So now this method is of two types. One is your user defined method, that is a method that user can create on their according to their need. Okay, for example, this get. Okay, and then your very method is always accompanied by a pair of parentheses. And other type of method is your inbuilt method. Okay, so already here, for example, your main function. Okay, that is the inbuilt method. Buffer reader, that is the inbuilt method. Parseint, it's an inbuilt method. Readline, it's an inbuilt method. Okay, and this one is your user defined method. A user defined method after a pair of parentheses is accompanied by a pair of braces. So whatever statements you want to put, you put it here. Okay, you put it here, and this becomes a block. Now if you want to execute anything inside this block, you execute this entire block by calling this method. So you call this method to execute the entire statement that is within this braces. Now Java provides a method in which, as our technique, in which you can overload this method. Overload means you can, for example, let us take an example of a bag. Okay, so let us say this bag can carry 1 kg of cotton. 1 kg of cotton. But now this cotton is very fluffy. So if it can carry a kg of cotton, that means it will be this big. Let us say it is this big. Now instead of 1 kg of cotton, if you want to carry 1 kg of pulses, dal carry karna chahte. So instead of 1 kg of pulses, you can also carry 1 kg of maize, because the size of the bag is bigger. Okay, so you can overload this. In this case, you can overload this bag, maize and your pulses. That means you are making this single bag do multiple tasks. Okay, so similarly in Java we can overload methods. ये जो method है हम इसको overload कर सकते हैं, मतलब same method name से हम multiple काम करा सकते हैं. Okay, that is your method overloading. So now we are going to see one program for your method overloading. Okay, as I write the program, I will tell you the differences as well in between. जैसे जैसे program कराते जाऊंगी, मैं आपको differences बताते जाऊंगी, different types of method overloading. Okay, you import the necessary packages and start. I'm going to write the program directly. Okay, so let me write down class sample. If I have a class named sample, okay, so now I want to create. Okay, so now there are various topics to cover. So if you remember, I have taught you static. If you remember, I told you something called as, when I was teaching you variable, I taught you a variable is of various types: local, global, and the class variable. Okay, so class variables were those variables that belong to class. That means that is instantiated by the class itself, but not by the object. Okay, so this belongs to the class. Similarly, there are methods also that are static, that belongs to the class. Okay, so one of the inbuilt, can anyone tell me, please write quickly in the chat box, the class method that we have been using so far. Please write in the chat box. We have already used a method, okay, that is instantiated by the class but not by the object. Can you name any? We have been using one method, and I've explained to you in detail that method name. Method name को मैंने हर एक word explain किया था. Yes or no? Am I audible, class?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so please write in the chat box if I'm audible. Do you remember the method name, the inbuilt method that belongs to the class but not to the object? If you remember, I called those methods as static variables. Okay, so if you declare any variable as static, it belongs to the class, not to the object. Similarly, when I was teaching you the main function, if you go through a main function carefully, it is public static void main. That means the method is a static method, belongs to the class but not to the object. That is why the moment the class is called, the main function gets called. You do not need to create an object to execute that main function. Okay, so far in the classes I have not been using any static method, but you need to learn the static methods. Static variables we have already used. So for method overloading, I'm going to use static method. Okay, so for next topic I will not use static method. तो उससे क्या होगा, आपको static method भी थोड़ा idea हो जाएगा. So now I'm going to create a function. Okay, static. Now this is inbuilt static method is your main function. Now I'm going to write down a user defined main function. Okay, so I have here static integer add. So this function takes, let us say, two variables, integer a and integer b. Okay, now let us say this function returns a plus b. Okay, till here it's simple and it is understood. Okay, now I want to, here I have added two numbers, but now I want to add three numbers, but I have already used the integer add function. So if prior to this one, if I had asked you to write a program wherein one function adds two numbers, it adds three numbers, it adds four numbers, five numbers, like that, what would you do? In add, let us say void add 1, void add 2, void add 3 करके अलग अलग function ही बना देते हैं आप. Okay, so that ways what is happening is, to attain one simple task of addition, you are needing more than one method. So instead of doing that, why not we make this method overload? इसी method को use करके इसको overload कर देते. So in that case what happens is, there are two types of method overloading. One is called as your parameterized method overloading, wherein the number of parameters are different. Okay, the parameter type is same. Okay, parameter type is same, but the number of parameter is different. And another is your the number of parameters is same, but the type of parameter is different. Okay, here we are going to use different types of parameter, and then I'll show you different numbers of parameters. Okay, so here I'm taking integer a and integer b in add function. So now I'm going to use that same method name, static integer, sorry, static, let us say double. Okay, now add. I'm using that same method name. See here the name of method is add. Here the name of method is add. But in this case, this add method is taking two integer variable and returning integer addition of integers. Now this method add, same method will take, let us say, two double parameters, and it will return, let us say, it will return a plus b. Okay, it will return the addition of the double numbers. So now this is called as your method overloading, wherein in the same class, you are using, देखो एक ही class के अंदर you are using two methods. Okay, you are using two methods with the same name. Now this methods, number of methods could be as many as you want. You want to create 5 methods with the same name, okay. But to overload this method, there should be some difference. Now the difference can be in the type. Okay, ये है प्रोटोटाइप, या तो ये प्रोटोटाइप अलग होना चाहिए, या तो आपके नंबर ऑफ पैरामीटर्स डिफरेंट होने चाहिए. If you see here the prototype is different. Here the add method is of integer type. Here the add method is of double type, but both of them are taking same number of parameters. Here it is taking 2 parameters, here it is taking 2 parameters. Okay, so now to execute it, I need one more class. Okay, I need one more class. Let us say class sample overload. Let's say class sample overload. Okay, so now I have opened the main function. Now make class main, and now I need the main function public static void main. Okay, so this is again a static function. So I have here string args as an array. Okay, now what do I do? If you see here, if it was not static method, okay, if it was not a static method, then you were needed to create an object. If अगर ये static नहीं होता, ये simple method होता ऐसे integer add होता, तो to execute this method, what would you do? You would create an object. Let us say sample s is equals to new sample करके आप एक object बनाते, and with this s you would execute this method like this. Okay, let's see here carefully. If it was not in static method, you would do this, because it is now an object method. Okay, to run this object method, you will have to create an object of that class. But now this is not a, but here the case is the contrary. Here the method they have declared is a method that belongs to the class but not to the object. Static है. Remember the class static जो मैंने पढ़ाया था. So I can run this directly. I need not create any object. For example, for main function, see here, this main function is also static. So I'm not executing this main with the object. It gets executed on its own. Okay. So let us print something. SOP. Let us print this value and print this value. Okay. So how I can print is, I can directly call this method by this object, this class name. So sample. Okay, so what am I doing with the sample is, I'm calling this method here with this class name. I can directly, because this is a class and this method belongs to the class, so with the help of this class I can directly call this method. If this was not static, I have to create, then this method becomes an object method. So I'll have to create an object of this class, and with this object I will execute this object class. But now this is a class and this method belongs to the class. So without creating an object, this class can directly call this class that belongs to this particular, this method that belongs to this class. So see here, sample.add. Let us pass some value here. This is integer. Okay, so this is integer. I'm going to pass, let us say 30, 40. Okay, so I have one more method to execute, system.out.println. Again, the name of the method class is sample, the name of the method is add. But now in this case, here in this case it is double means float का जो लंबा सा वैल्यू होता है उसको हम double बोल सकते हैं. You can also write down here float. Okay, so I'm going to pass two double values here, 23.23, let us say 42, and let us say 90. Okay, so I close my method, class. I close my main function, I close my class. Okay, so this is called as your method overloading with different method prototype. यहाँ पे methods के prototype return type different. Okay, so now this one will return 30 plus 40, 70. This one will return around like 76, something like that, 76 point something. This is your method overloading, one type of method overloading. Okay, wherein we use the same method name, but it reads different types of parameters, and also static members. I told you in the beginning, that static member is of two type. Okay, static member is of two type, one type and another type. The first type is your static variable. Static variable. So static variable are those variable which you have declared static. For example, if you have integer a, now if you declare this as static, this is called as static variable. Again, if you have this class sample, you want to assign to a2, what you can do at the bottom is directly sample, you call the class name dot a equals to 2. Now this belongs to the class but not to the object. Okay, if you will not do static here, if you will not be static here, then how do you declare it? Then you will have to first create an object of sample. Let us say sample object1 equals to new sample. Then with this object1 obj1, or let us say ob1, you will assign ob1 dot a equals to 2. Object to object, class to class. Okay, so now next is your static variable, another is your static method. Now again, static method is of two type. Okay, static method is of two type. One is your inbuilt static method, another is your user defined. Okay, inbuilt is your main function, user defined is whatever user defines. Now what is the use? Why do we need this? The need of this one is for security and privacy reasons. If you do not want your variables and methods to be accessed randomly by any object, if you do not want any external object to directly access your variables or methods for privacy reason, then you declare those methods and variables as static, that belongs to the class. Only class has the right to access them. So for security reasons, for privacy reasons, we need static members. Now tell me, what is static member, type of static member, static variable we have already used, static inbuilt we had used, static method I have used here. So is it clear, all types of static members? And what is method overloading? There are two types of method overloading with different return type, with different numbers of parameters. Okay, out of these two, I have different return types explained to you. Is this so far clear to you all? Each one of you write in the chat box. I need to repeat something. Everyone, please write in the chat box. Is method overloading and static methods clear? Boss, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
ओके, सो चैट बॉक्स में लिखो क्लियर हुआ है नहीं सब? थोड़ा इंटरैक्टिव ज्यादा बनो, इतना आलस मत बनो. टुडे इज जस्ट धनतेरस. आज दिवाली का उतना बड़ा दिन भी नहीं है. ठीक है, धनतेरस ही है, वो भी आप लोग तो जाओगे नहीं, मॉम डैडी जाएंगे, आपकी दीदी बहन जाएंगे. ओके, ट्राई टू बी मोर इंटरैक्टिव. ओके, अब बीच में क्वेश्चन पूछूंगी आप लोगों को, देखो फिर. एंड यस, आई थिंक I've scheduled the last time I'd received a request from I think your batch only. आपका ये दूसरा था, तो मैंने दोनों का ही सेशनल 1 पोस्टपोन किया था. तो on 6th you have your भाईटिका. Okay, so that is the end of the Diwali. And then on 7th for another batch I have scheduled the sessional. Okay, 7th को आपका भी sessional 1 होगा. The syllabus will be मैं कल या परसों तक जितना भी पढ़ाऊंगी वो सारे आपके sessional 1 के syllabus होंगे. Okay, so 7th को आपको sessional होगा सुबह 9 बजे. Okay, Sunday है इसलिए. Okay, so now you have understood method overloading with different return type. So now I'll explain to you method overloading with different number of parameters. Okay. Okay. So now let me create one more class named as sample one. Now I have opened this class. So let me create that same method static integer add. Let me say add text to variables integer A and integer B. It returns the same thing, return A plus B. I close this window. Okay, so now I am going to create one more method. Let me create one more method. So, static. Now I want to perform method overloading. Okay, so if you'll see here, the return type is different. Method overloading can be done in two ways. One with different return type, another one with same return type but different number of parameters. Okay, so now I'm going to write integer only. Here parameters return type are different, but now I'm using same return type, integer. Okay, I'm going to use the same method, add integer A, integer B. Now, how will the main function differentiate? Now, the main function will differentiate between these two methods by number of parameters. When in the main function, I pass two parameters. Okay, here, how did the main function differentiate it? Which method is being called? Out of these two same add method, main function ने कैसे differentiate किया? कौन सा method बुला रहे हैं? With the type of the parameter. See here, the type of the parameter is integer. When this main function sees that the type of the parameter is integer, it will call this method. And when it sees the type of the parameter is float, then it will call this method. Okay, but in this case, both of the method are of type integer. So now how will the main function differentiate? In the add method, if you pass two parameters, it will call this method. If you pass three parameters, it will call this method. Okay, so the difference between the methods will be made by the main function either with respect to the type of the parameter you're passing in the function or with the number of parameters that you're passing in the function. Okay, so here I have this one. So again, let us say return A plus B plus C. I'm returning this one. Okay, and I'm closing it again. Let us create one more class sample overload one. I've opened this class, I've opened public static void main function, string, args. Okay, I've opened the main function. Now because again I've declared this method as static, so I need not create an object. अगर ये मैंने स्टैटिक नहीं बनाया होता तो मुझे यहाँ पे ऑब्जेक्ट बनाना होता, लेकिन मैंने स्टैटिक ये मेथड क्लास को बिलोंग करा दिया है, so I need not create an object, rather I can directly call this method with the help of this object, class name. Okay, so system.out.println, I have sample one sample one dot add. Now comes the main thing. Now in this add, if I will pass here three variables, see here three parameters I have passed to this method. Now this method will call this particular function but not this function. Why? Because this function reads the three integers and in here I have passed three integers. Okay, so this function will execute first now. Similarly again, system.out.println sample1 dot add. So now if I pass here I have passed here to only two parameters and both are of type integer. So now here this one will call this function will be called. Okay, this function will be called. Again if you want to do one more thing here, this is also possible. Copy नहीं होता क्या? Let me write down static integer, static, let me write down double only, double add integer a comma integer b. Have again performed function overloading. Okay, you are return a plus b. Okay, I'm returning a plus b. Okay, so now I have here double. Okay, the add function only. Here also I performed. Here also I have performed. The first name of method is add. Here I have performed method overloading with different return type. Here I perform method overloading with same return type but different number of parameters. Now main for here also two parameter. Here here I should write double. Okay. Double. So now here, how will the main function differentiate? How will main function differentiate between these two methods? Here it is integer, here it is float. So let us see here, how will it look like in the where did it go? I'm sorry guys, that entire code is gone now. I hope you've kept that. Okay, so I'm just gonna पूरा कोड ही चला गया. ओके, सो यहाँ पे जो मैं कर रही थी बस उतना दिखा देती हूँ. You just consider this one, but here number of parameters are different. In that case, what happened? हमारा main function क्या होता है फिर? System.out.println. Okay, पहले था हमारा sample.add में we had sample.add में we had 2,3. So now this was integer, add with two integer. Similarly, we had sample, we would do sample.add. Now if I pass two floats, for example 2.0 comma 3.0, then the other function would be called with double, because double is float and this particular statement will call that double. And then we had the third one, sample.add with three parameters. Okay, 2, 3, 4. So this is your method overloading and different types of method overloading, and how does the main function differentiates between the different method, same method. Okay, how does the main function differentiates between different sets of method with the same name but with different characteristics. Okay, that is your different types of method overloading. What is method overloading? Remember, method overloading always happens within a class. should you always remember, method overloading always happens within a class. ये add method, if you'll create add method here also, then that is not method overloading. That is something different. We'll study that in the next topic. Okay. So with this one is method overloading, different types of method overloading, and static members clear to you all. Quickly write in the chat box. Okay, class. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Okay. So now, class, in the the lecture that we left, okay, हमने पढ़ा था constructors. Okay, हमने constructor पढ़ा था. Now, constructor overloading is also possible. If your method overloading is possible, then your constructor overloading is also possible. Let me show you how can we do constructor overloading. I thought I will use the same example. It won't be possible because I have to change that's all the method name. So I'll do one thing. I'll write entire new code, okay, for constructor overloading. Constructor I'm not going to explain because you already know it. Okay, so I'm just going to explain to you what is constructor overloading. So let me create a class sample. Okay, if there is any part in the code that you don't understand, please poke me. Okay, so I have a class. Let me create a variable integer id. Okay, मैं धीरे धीरे जा रही हूँ. If there is anything, please tell me. String name. Okay, so let me do integer age. So I've declared all the variables. Okay, I've declared all the variables. Now I want to read all these from the users. So what do I do? To read value from the user, I need to create a block of code. Let us do that with the help of method. So now instead of doing method overloading, because we are overloading the constructor, so let me create a constructor. We create a constructor with the name of the class. So I have the name of the class here. Let us say this integer, this constructor reads some parameters. Okay, so I have here integer I and if I do string name. Okay, so let's do string n. Okay, so now to id I'm initializing I. Okay, to name I'm initializing n. Okay, and I'm closing it. I hope it is understood till here. Now because I want to perform constructor overloading, okay, now I want to perform constructor overloading. So I'm calling the constructor again, but now with different sets of parameters. Okay, so I have here, let me say integer I, string n, okay, and then let me say integer a variable. So now I'm going to do assign value or initialize these variables. To id I'm going to assign I. Okay, to name I'm going to assign n. Okay, I'm going slow. If there is anything I don't understand, please ask me. To age, let us say I'm going to assign a. Okay, so I've assigned different values to all these constructors and I've closed this constructor. Okay, I've closed this constructor. Let this code end here. I'm happy with you all. Okay. Okay. So now let me call my main method. Let's say I want to display something. So I have the void display here. Okay, so I have the display function here. I want to print something. So I have the main function, system.out.println here. Okay, so what do I want to print? I want to print the ID. Okay, so after that I want to leave some space. Okay, and then what do I want to print? I want to print name. Again, I leave some space after name, ID, name, and age I want to print. Okay, I'm leaving some space after that. So last age. So it will give me the ID, it will return me the ID, name, and the age after some spaces. Okay, with this one, I am closing the display function. मैंने display function को बंद कर दिया. Okay. So now what do? I call the main function. Okay, I simply call the main function. Okay, static void main function. Write down the string args by yourself. Okay, so now what do? I create an object. Student, let us say s1 equals to new student student. Okay, so now look at your class. Now my first, okay, so now my first this is my sample class now. I will have to do sample, sorry. Sample s1 equals to new sample. Okay, I named it as sample, okay, not student. Though the details belongs to a student, I've named this as sample. So now see here the first construct. This is your first construct. See, this is your constructor. Now is this constructor matching with this one? Yes. Sample with a pair of parentheses, sample with a pair of parentheses. Okay. So now this sample is taking two parameters. One is of type integer and the other is of type string. Okay, so in string I'm saving the name, in integer I'm saving the ID. So to this, let us call this constructor first. Okay, let us call this constructor first. Let me call that constructor again. Sample s1 equals to new sample. Okay. So now I have already mentioned it is taking ID because ID is assigned to I and to N name has been assigned. So let us say the ID of the student is your ID is, let's say 2000, your third year, so 2021. So probably you've taken your admission in the year 18. Okay, so your ID is, let us say 2018 001. 2018. So then you cannot take integer. Then you cannot take integer, make it as long. Okay, so I'm simply going to do, because I've taken integer, I'm going to remove the 001. You'll have to write it as long if it's this long. And then let us say your name is that's this batch is your second semester. No? Second year तो कौन कौन है यहाँ पे? Or do I have here? Rajesh. Okay. So your name is Rajesh. Okay, so when it sees two parameters, it will call this particular constructor, and 001 will be assigned to this integer and Rajesh will be assigned to this string name. Okay, so name is equals to n, it will be assigned here. Okay, so now I have one more. And now I have one more. Array yaar. Let me do sample. It's not getting copy pasted. Sample x2 equals to new sample. Okay, so now see here. Now this particular sample, this particular constructor is taking three values. Okay, the first is id, the second is name, and the third is age. Okay, so assigned here it is say id. Okay, and the name is Shivam, and the name is class. My battery is low and the current, we do not have current at our home. Okay, so if my laptop goes down, just consider that is the end of the class and I'll continue the class in the next session. अगर light आया, then I'll continue it now. Okay, अगर light नहीं आया और laptop बंद हो गया, disconnect हो गई, then I'll not be able to continue with the class. Okay, this is Shiva. Now I need to assign age. So let us say 22. Okay, so now this is done. Interest will be here. If you see here. Now I've assigned that. Oh, where did my display function go? Where did my अच्छा यहाँ पे है ना? Okay. Sorry, I thought my display function I erased it. So now I've assigned values. Now I need to execute them. To execute them, I have the display function which will display these ones. Okay, ये display करेगी. So I have here s1 my object. Okay, s1 dot display and s2 dot display. See, so now when s1 dot display will do, this display will be called so id name age. In the first case, okay, in the first case when s1 is taking only two parameters, so it will go to this constructor. It will display the id and the name. The id and the name for age. We know the age is of type integer. The default value of age in one, when I was teaching you different types of parameters, default value मैंने print करवाया था. So you know the default value of the age. This of type integer. You can execute and you can check it for yourself. Default value क्या होता है? Okay, so that will be called. And when it does s2 dot display, so this is s2 for the sample constructor. S2 is taking three parameters. So this particular constructor will be called, and this void will display id, name, and age. Okay, and this is called as your constructor overloading, wherein you are using the same constructor with different parameters. Okay, with different parameters, and they will be called according to the values. Okay, according to the parameter type that you have passed in the constructors while the constructors is instantiated. Okay, so again, where constructor overloading is possible, just like method overloading or constructor overloading is possible within the class, not between the class but within the class. Okay, so is constructor overloading clear to you all? Class, is constructor overloading clear to you all? Okay, good. Okay, so class, I have only 8% battery remaining. Okay, so I wanted to teach you. Today we have learned constructor overloading, method overloading, and your static members. Okay, I wanted to teach you guys overriding as well, method overriding, क्योंकि अभी comparison में easy होता. So now my battery is down. It's only 8% is remaining battery. Okay, if I'll start, it doesn't make any sense. So we are going to stop as of now. Okay, so आप लोग फिर भी halt में रहना. So if my light comes back, I will continue with the class. If my light doesn't comes back, 1 बजे से पहले नहीं आया, तो just consider this as the end of the class. As of now, let us consider we are taking a quick break. Okay, light आया तो मैं शिवम को फोन करके बता दूंगी. But until 1 o'clock, you will have to wait until 1 o'clock. Just consider this as a short break. Okay, Do you have any class from 2 o'clock? Shivam, do you have any class from 2 o'clock?
No, ma'am.
ओके सो देन अगर लाइट आया तो 1 2 3 में फिर से क्लास लूँगी 1 बजे से 3 बजे ओके and then this constructor overloading and method overloading. Constructor overloading, it will be compile time program only, but runtime overloading, method overloading, you will have to both of the method and constructor overloading you will have to execute in the lab, and the aim would be to print the employee details. जो एम्प्लॉय है एक बैंक में, कंसिडर एक एम्प्लॉय बैंक में काम करता है, तो उसका डिटेल्स आपको प्रिंट करना है, एक बार यूजिंग कंस्ट्रक्टर ओवरलोडिंग, एक बार यूजिंग मेथड ओवरलोडिंग. सो दीज टू आर योर लैब एम्स. ओके, सो लेट्स टेक अ ब्रेक अंटिल 1 o'clock. उससे पहले भी अगर लाइट आ गया तो मैं आप लोगों को पोक कर दूंगी. आई विल सेंड अ फ्रेश न्यू लिंक. ओके, अंटिल देन लेट्स टेक अ ब्रेक. ओके, ओके क्लास, class, is it okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.